So, a while back I was talking to Chester here, and I forget how the discussion really wrapped about, but talking about how when you keep your mouth shut and when do you testify to your beliefs? When do you do that? I mean, if you're at work, and I said, I've got a sermon I gave a while back, so we're going to visit that brief sermon right now, titled Time to Speak. When do you speak? When do you keep your mouth shut? When is the proper time? When might be the wrong time? And how do you determine and judge when that time is? So we're going to turn over here to this verse right here. You're all familiar with it, I'm sure. From Ecclesiastes, Solomon writing, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get, a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak." So, determining when those times are can be difficult. And sometimes we get confused. Sometimes we are silent when we should talk. And sometimes where I have my problem is sometimes I talk when I should be silent. And some people say, I've heard this over the years, especially in our movement, people say, "I tell it like it is." I've heard people say that. "I say what's on my mind. I don't hold words back. I let them know what I think." You've all heard people say that. "I say what's on my mind. I tell it what it is, like it is, and I'm not going to hold any words back. They know what I think." And you know, when you're talking to somebody, especially if somebody that you really like to get some information to about our movement, about our beliefs, and about our people, there's a saying I've heard years ago, you probably heard it also. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's the difference between us and liberals. We really do love our people. They don't care. They care about themselves. That's why even among the liberals, when Kamala Harris was trying to get support for her campaign, she had to pay Oprah Winfrey like $1 million for her interview. And she had to pay these other people because they just care about themselves. If they really cared about the people, they'll offer them services free. And so, but we really do love our people, love our heritage, culture. We really do love our nation. But saying the way it is and telling it the way it is and speaking what's in your mind, those may be somewhat commendable if you're using some wisdom. Now, the two most controversial, and I know everybody's going to agree with this, the two most controversial subjects a person can talk about is what? Religion and politics. And it's not uncommon. You hear around the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and so forth, people say, well, be careful. When my mom and dad here, don't talk about politics and religion. And people get advice. Or when so-and-so's here, don't talk about politics and religion. And I was given that advice by somebody a number of years back. Nobody in my family. But they were having some friends over, and they said, well, now, they got a son who's a homosexual, so don't say anything about homosexuals. I thought, what? Anyway, I don't think I listened to him. That's probably why I wasn't invited back. Anyway, so because you don't talk about politics and religion, you're not supposed to anyway. That's why when I go to a bank, when you go to a bank, the teller always says, in my example, "Good morning, Mr. Rob. It sure is nice to see you today. Is it raining outside?" They never say, "Good morning, Mr. Rob. It sure be nice if we could get all the aliens out of our country." They never say that. The teller never says to me, "Hello, Mr. Rob, that Liz Cheney sure is a witch. Joe Biden sure is a creepy guy." They never say that. They always ask, "The weather's outside." They'll say, "Hello, Mr. Rob, is it still raining outside?" Or, and I think to myself, well, look out the window. Look out the window. I don't say that. I'm not rude to them. I'm not saying, "Look out the window," but I'm sort of thinking that. And there are people locally here in Harrison who do listen to our sermons. So if you're one of the tellers at the bank, I understand the rules you'll have to follow. But they'll ask me, "Good morning, Mr. Rob. Is it warming up outside?" You know what I'm talking about. And they pretend like I'm the first person and the only person they ask that question to. It's the same question they ask every single customer that walks through the door into the bank. Is it warming up outside? Is it raining outside? Is it still raining outside? Has it stopped raining outside? Did it stop? Is it snowing outside? How deep is the snow? It's going to warm up. It's the same thing. How does it go? It's the same thing. They ask the same questions, the same people, all day long. And they're pointless questions about the weather. And the reason they do that is because nobody cares about the weather. Nobody cares about the weather. So you can't blame them. I mean, after all, listen, just imagine yourself. You walk into a bank. What would you think would happen to the bank teller? Instead of asking you, "Is it raining outside?" the bank teller instead said to you, "Hello, Mr. Rob. Are aliens still flooding into America? Taking our job, destroying our community, ruining our economy, and making it unsafe to go out to the stores at night?" Do you think they would be able to keep their job very long if they said that? So they say, "Is it still raining outside?" I've never gone to a bank even one time where they said to me, "Hello, Mr. Rob, it sure is good to see you," my last customer was a vile, disgusting, AIDS-infested, sodomite, transgendered freak. I've never heard them say that. They might be thinking it, but they don't say it. Because it's much safer to just say, "Is it raining outside?" And they say that because nobody cares about the weather. No one fights over the weather because the weather is not important. But politics and religion, that is important. They get at the very issues of life. And because they are important, people get emotionally involved. In fact, every war, and I may be wrong, every war that's been fought in the history of the world has been fought over politics and religion. Nobody fights over the weather. I don't think there's ever been one example of a country invading another country because they didn't like the weather. I don't think that has ever happened. And so every war has been fought over politics and religion, except for there is one. One war that was not fought over politics and religion. And that is when that prince at Troy abducted the Helen of Sparta and started the Trojan War because he took the queen and kidnapped her. So that was fought over love. Now, there have been a lot of fights fought over love, but I don't think there's been any wars fought over love, except for that one. It's always over politics and religion. So all political campaigns are made of various religions or no religion. We see this example in both the Democratic and Republican Party. And much as I like what the Republican Party is doing, it really disgusts me when they say, "Everybody's welcome. We don't care what your religion is. We don't care what sexual orientation is. We don't care about any of this stuff. We don't care whether you be Christian or Hindu or Muslim or Jewish. We don't care. You're all welcome into the big tent of the Republican Party." And I want to, So all religions are all politics pretty much made of all various ideas and beliefs and people, because they're trying to build a big political campaign. And one example of that first say religions are built up just the opposite. Religion don't care what your politics is. They just want you to come inside the church. So they're not going to delve into politics because that could divide the attendance at church. And I know that at 10 years old, that was a question I had of my mom and dad, because we went to attend Ebenezer Baptist Church in Detroit, Michigan in 1956, and the Democratic candidate was Adlai Stevenson, and the Republican candidate was Eisenhower, had a big sign, bumper sticker, "I like Ike." And I saw the bumper stickers in the car in the parking lot. We drove in, and I asked my folks, I said, "How come we got Democrats going to our church?" You know, because churches don't care. They just, you know, they don't care what your politics is. They just want you to come to church. And so, for the most part, churches avoid talking about politics from the pulpit. They just avoid it. And now, there is one topic that churches, I guess, could be a political discussion that they actually do talk about, and that is your support for Israel. All churches are going to do that. That's sort of political, and they do say that if you want to get blessed by God, you got to support Israel. But everything else, all other political issues are avoided, and also the issue of race. You can't talk about race from the pulpit in modern churches either. And so you talk about all these other things, but don't talk about politics, and don't talk about race. But you can talk about Israel. You got to talk about support for the Jewish state of Israel. You got to talk about that. That's important in their mind. Now, in the Christian identity movement, of course, we don't pay attention to those rules. And so we talk about politics freely. We talk about religion. And we talk about race a lot. In fact, it's a central thing of everything we talk about, I think, for the most part. I mean, when sometimes people ask me about coming to church areas, well, I said, here's sort of the rules. I don't use the word rules, but, you know, are you white and Christian and do you love your guns? You know, we're a racial church, white Christian. And if you love your guns, if you don't love your guns, might as well not come to church either, our church. So maybe that's why we don't have more people here. I don't know. But we got a nice crowd. And anyway, but politics, religion, and race are like the central theme of everything we talk about, you know. And unlike the weather, those things are important. These things matter. And so why wouldn't you talk about them? Now, it doesn't mean that a person can't use common sense, because sometimes, and here we're going to talk about the time to speak and the time to keep silent, sometimes it's better not to talk about politics, race, and religion in order to actually promote those things. Sometimes it's actually better you can promote them by not talking about them. Let me give you an example here. Now, we're going to people, we're going to just make up their names. John Smith. And John Smith, in our little story here, is a white Christian patriot. And he works hard, but he keeps his mouth shut at work about politics, religion, and race. Nobody at work knows what his beliefs are. Why? Because he doesn't want to get fired. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? He doesn't want to get fired. Why? Because if he gets fired, he can't make his house payment, car payment, and will have to lower his standard of living until he gets another job. So he don't talk about politics, religion, or race, or anything like that, because I want to keep my job and pay my house, pay for my car payment, house, and vacations, and so on. So it makes sense, sort of sense, I guess. Now, this other guy we're going to look at, Sam Jones. Sam Jones is just like John Smith. Sam Jones is a white Christian patriot. At work, he also keeps his mouth shut about politics, religion, and race. Why? Same reason. Because he doesn't want to get fired, because if he gets fired, he can't make his house payment, he can't make his car payment, and will have to lower his standard of living until he gets another job. All right, same reason, but there is a difference. Because Sam Smith also is a faithful tither. And he knows that if he loses his job, he can't support the cause. And he's aware of that. If he loses his job, he cannot support the cause of white Christian revival. We have two people who, from the outside, look like they have the exact same reason for keeping their mouth shut at work. One, however, keeps his mouth shut at work so he can maintain his lifestyle. The other keeps his mouth shut so he can maintain a lifestyle, but also so he can support the cause. You don't have to embroil yourself in every political or religious discussion that you come up against. It's not important. Now, many people have the attitude that I don't care what people say or think. I'm going to defend my ideals, values, and principles. And that's admirable. But then sometimes somebody says something and you want to reply, maybe at work. You want to reply, you want to take a stand, but you don't. And then you feel guilty. Feel maybe you weren't courageous. Or somebody else would tell you, oh, well, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. And you feel guilty about that because you think you didn't do what maybe others would have done. And then somebody reminds you, well, you're supposed to obey God rather than men. So I don't care. Say that's on your mind. Say the truth. Now, there's no sin in speaking out. But there's no sin in keeping silence either. There are people, here we gave 2 examples of people who are attracted to this racial awakening. But there's some people in our movement that just have a more quiet nature. That's the way God made them. I can't change that. You can't change that. That's just the way God made them. And you can't condemn that. Some people are more bold in their life. And some people have a more quiet nature. I know one person who has a very quiet nature and probably would never cause disturbance among anybody. But he's faithful tither to our church here. Now, those people think, well, this is what I would do. There's always, it's like the fastest gun in the West. There's always going to be somebody with a faster mouth than you are. If you think you're going to tell it the way it is, believe me, there's somebody going to have a faster mouth than you have. So, just like the Old West, the fastest gun in the West. There's always going to be somebody who is more bold. But at what point does boldness become foolishness? I'm going to give some examples here on a time to speak and a time to keep silent. All right. Sermon on the Mount. Agree with thine adversary quickly while thou art in the way, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge deliver thee to the officers, and cast you into prison. Now, this isn't some little platitude that sounds good in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus Christ is giving his disciples some very real principles dealing with the society in which you're living. But just telling them how to have good social skills, how to win friends. They wouldn't say, hey guys, just be nice to everybody so they'll like you. That's not what he's talking about. He's giving some survival skills in an evil world. He's saying, listen up guys. You live in desperate times. We live in desperate times today. This is what Jesus is telling us. This is advice. You live in desperate times. The enemy has assumed a lot of power. Do whatever you can do to stay out of their courts. Stay out of their courts. And I'm going to give about a 10-minute example of our own personal life here on me, and I don't know if I should go into it now or not listening to this very wise example from Dr. Fields a number of years back. And I wish I would have listened to him, because by not listening to him, it took me into the court where I was possibly going to lose everything we have here by a wicked man, a wicked judge, in a wicked court system. Where if I would have just listened to Dr. Fields and say, just write a little letter and say you won't do that again. Yeah, they'll forget about it. But I was bold. I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I didn't say that to him. I'm not going to do that. We're in the right. I'm going to stand by it. But we almost lost everything. Jesus said, stay out of the courts. Stay out of their courts. We live in desperate times. The enemy has assumed a lot of power. Do whatever you can do to stay out of their courts. Because what? We wrestle against flesh and blood, against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness in high places. I think this holds true whenever the enemy has power and sway. I don't think Jesus is telling his disciples to be cowardly. But he's saying, use some wisdom. But again, if it's only done for your own personal financial security, then it's for the wrong reason. It's the love of money, which is the root of all evil. It's just, well, I want to be able to maintain my lifestyle. Well, that's the wrong reason. But if it's truly done because you recognize your tithe is used to promote the cause, and it would be in jeopardy, then it better remain silent. You know, we don't want to split hairs over what if in this situation. I mean, we could probably do that all day long. What ifs, what ifs, what if. But I think the general principle is use some wisdom. Your job is important. But if it's just for the job, just for the new car, new home, and all the bank account, and not have any inside inner need to, hey, my job is important because also the church depends on my tithe, then it's a different reason. But each person has to decide for themselves. All right, let's look here at example number 2. Matthew 10:16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now this is an interesting verse because it appears Jesus is actually telling his disciples to copy a characteristic trait of our enemies. But let's look at the full context of this also. All right. Again, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves, but beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the council, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. So he's warning his disciples, be wise as serpents. Beware. When he says, be wise as serpents, I believe he's speaking in code. Because serpent, we read numerous times, especially in Matthew, I think 23, serpent is a code word for what? The Jewish Pharisees. And he was constantly contending with the Jewish Pharisees. I don't think he's talking about snakes. These serpents were the same people that he spoke about in Matthew 23:33, when he said, he's talking to the Jewish Pharisees, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? There are other places where he identified the Talmudic Pharisees as serpents. So he's just simply telling guys, I know you're excited about things. Use wisdom. Use some wisdom. You don't want to get caught up in their web and be drunk and lose your viability. He's counseling his disciples to use some wisdom. You don't need to blurt out your whole agenda to everyone you meet on the street. Remember, you've seen that movie, A Few Good Men, where Jack Nicholson plays a part of like an officer. I think Tom Cruise, the prosecuting attorney, and he said, "What do you want?" He said, and Tom Cruise, "Tell him the truth." And Jack Nicholson, however, said, "You can't handle the truth." The fact is, there's a lot of people that can't handle the truth. They just can't handle it. You don't need to shout out every part of our beliefs or every part of our agenda to everybody you disagree with. There was a number of years ago, we had a young girl come to one of our conferences, totally brand new to everything. Totally brand new to everything. And she'll talk to another fellow across the table, and she says something about the rapture. Now, I personally don't believe in the rapture. And I'd heard her say that, but I didn't say anything. I kept my mouth shut. That's not the issue. But what he said to her was, well, somebody needs to straighten her out. I thought, that's the craziest thing to say. And she'd never been back. You don't need to blurt out everything. So some people just can't handle the truth. You don't overload them. You don't overload them with every point of doctrine you've heard about in your church or your Bible studies, whatever, and you don't try to straighten out their whole life. You say, here's where all the things that you've been taught is wrong. And we'll start with this and go all the way through the alphabet till we get to everything that you've been taught that is wrong. I've seen people do that. Don't overload them. Some people can't handle the truth. And our enemies, they don't deserve the truth. So, you've heard the need-to-know rule. The enemy has used the need-to-know rule against us many times. The need-to-know rule. We saw a perfect example of this going back a few years now when Barack Obama ran for president. I know you've all seen that video where he said we're just 5 days away from fundamentally changing America. We've all heard that. And most Americans voted for him, thought he meant he was going to get all the crooks out of Washington, D.C. He never explained what he really meant, that he's going to promote a socialist agenda that will rob us of our constitutionally protected liberties. That's what he meant when he said fundamentally change America. That's what he was talking about. But he didn't say that. He didn't say that. He didn't say any of those things like that. Or when the media and these globalists, you watch them on TV, the news reporters from CNN and all of the other liberal stations, they don't say what their agenda really is. They don't tell it the way it is. They don't say what they think. They don't do that. I've never heard once anybody at CNN or any of the liberal stations get up and say, I hate that old white Christian America. We hate those values and ideals of rugged individualism. We hate the whole premise of Christian America and all these people who cling to the guns and religion. So if you elect me or you follow our policies, we'll ensure that we'll destroy America that you knew and we'll dump the refuge of the world on the shores of America and replace the Constitution with alien laws and alien gods from Asia, India, China, and the jungles of Africa. They never say that, but that's what they're doing. And that's their intention. And that's what they want. And that's what they're promoting. But I've never heard them say that. Not once. They're smart. You got to give them credit for that. They're not telling you what their agenda is. So why do we feel we have to unload everything upon somebody that we're trying to witness to? He knew, Barack Obama knew that wouldn't sell if he said, he couched under fundamentally changing America. He didn't say we're going to destroy America. He knew that wouldn't sell. He knew that was not wise. We're not cunning. We're not crafty. So everyone who voted for Barack Obama, is back then, same with these other silly people, thought he was going to get rid of the crooks in Washington, D.C. Now, I'm saying this with a certain amount of tongue-in-cheek, but sometimes I wish we had those crooks back in Washington, D.C. You know, those old-time crooked politicians we read about in the history books? Every time I hear about the crooks in Washington, D.C., I want to tell them that I wish we had some of the old-fashioned crooked politicians back in power. You know, the kind, they made a little money, they lined their pockets a little bit more, and they made a few deals, so forth. They stuffed extra wads of cash maybe into their pocket. They got some kickbacks. I know that's crooked, but, somehow I feel would be happy with them because I think, and I may be wrong, but I think even those crooked politicians somehow still thought America was still a pretty good country, a great place to live. They still believed in America, grandma and apple pie. It's not the crooks in Washington that concern me. It's the traitors who fundamentally want to change America because they fundamentally hate America. That's what scares me, not the crooks. It isn't the crooks that cause me to fear for my country deep into the night. It's the agents of globalism who view our cherished liberties as a stumbling block to their world government. These liberals, I hear sometimes, you've heard them too, newscasters say, can't they see the policies are not working? They say, can't Newsom see his policy in California not working when Obama was president, or Biden? Can't they see their policies are not working? Yes, they can see they're not working, but to their mind, the reason they're not working is because they don't have enough power. You give them total power, then they think their policies will work. And why don't they have total power? Because you are standing in their way. So I wish for the old time, the old days, the old crooked politicians. But still, we face a massive influence by those who hate America. Even with Trump as president, there's still a massive influence coming in within government, local, state, and city government, and especially in our churches and social institutions who really hate the fundamental bedrock of America, which was America was white-centered and Christ-centered from 1600 on up until 1965. But they are in their wise and crafty con game. And they've been incredibly successful. So Jesus says, be wise as serpents. Promote your cause. But you don't have to spill out everything to everybody you talk to. The most important thing to understand is love for our people. Not to know what is the best holiday to have a feast on. Not to know which is the best day to go to church on. It's important that we have this love for our people. That's why he said, love your people, love your God. That's our mantra here. Let's look at another one. This is in 1 Samuel 16, 1 through 5. God is talking to Samuel the prophet. Don't start reading that yet. I'll stop you. God is telling Samuel the prophet, you're going to go anoint a new king and for Israel. Saul has been rejected as king. Now Saul started out as a very righteous man, admirably, very humble man. But somehow he got off course. So God says to Samuel, I've rejected Saul as king. And I made provisions for David to become king. So I want you to go to David, and you can anoint him as king. But Samuel, the prophet of God, was afraid. He was afraid of the agents of Saul, afraid that they would question him about his traveling and why he's going and kill him. So, the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you continue to feel sorry for Saul? I have rejected him as king of Israel. Fill your container with olive oil and go. I'm sending you to Jesse, who lives in Bethlehem, because I have chosen one of his sons to be king. But Samuel said, if I go, Saul will kill me. He'll hear the news and he'll kill me. And the Lord says, don't tell them what you're going to do. Wisdom for our movement. Don't tell them what you're going to do. Get a calf and take it with you. If they inquire what you're going to do, tell them you're going to make a sacrifice. But don't tell them your real purpose. Let them think it's about the sacrifice, but it's really about anointing David. It sounds like God was telling Samuel, just lie to the SOB. That's what it sounds like to me. You have no obligation to tell our enemies anything. So sometimes I hear white Christian patriots say, I tell it like it is. Why? Why? The enemy doesn't tell all their schemes. They don't tell us what their schemes are. Have you ever heard, like I said a moment ago, have you ever heard a reporter or a politician say, okay, while we are reporting on the news, our real agenda is to steal away your kids, transgender your boys into girls, promote white guilt, and bring about white genocide? Have you ever heard a reporter say that? And yet, behind those eyeballs, look across the TV screen, that is what they're doing. Samuel wasn't going to Bethlehem for a sacrifice. He was going to only David. But he made the king's agents believe a lie by deception of a sacrifice. Now, we want people to be courageous. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. But you don't need to get in the face of everyone who disagrees with you. You don't need to get in their face. Somebody says something that you find repulsive. You don't need to get in their face and argue with them. Are you going to change your mind? Probably not. If there's someone really seeking truth, is searching, want answers, then you sit and talk to them. But just because somebody says something, you don't need to get in their face. You don't need to do it. One of the things I've done, not a lot, but I have done on occasion, I'll say to somebody, well, if I will show you why we should embrace white nationalism, would you then support that? And if they say, and they usually do, no, then my response, well, then why should I waste my time on you? Why should you waste your time on people that aren't going to listen? They'll waste your time on it. So, sometimes I hear people over the years say they got fired for their racial beliefs. I've had people, you probably have Jason call your office more than once. I got fired for my racial beliefs. I want to sue them. Sometimes their firing actually may be wrong. And their complaint may be justified. In other words, if you work someplace, you have a bumper sticker in your car, a Confederate flag, you're driving the parking lot, and the boss comes out and tries to say, you're fired, I don't like your bumper sticker. Well, that would be a violation of free speech. However, here's the thing that a lot of people don't, even among our movement, don't understand. When you are at work and you want to discuss politics or argue politics or religion with your co-workers, the boss may be justified in firing you. He may be justified. Keep in mind, when you're hired as an employee, you are during that period of time, the property of the employer. You belong to him. And your time is obligated to the employer. That's the way I see it. Some people may disagree. I'm just telling you the way I see it. When you work for a company and you're hired, you belong to that employer. He's yours. You're his. You're his slave, in a sense. You're giving up your liberties and everything else because you sold yourself for employment. Nothing wrong with that. You've got to pay the bill, right? So keeping silent is not being cowardly. Now I think, and I believe anyway, these three examples will help demonstrate that it is okay if it's done for the purpose of earning income, for which money is earned, for which can then promote white Christian revival with your tithe and offering. After all, this movement cannot exist if everybody was what? Unemployed. We need people working. We need people getting a paycheck and financially supporting this cause. Whether it be this church or some other ministry. We're not supported by a pack of wealthy donors. And only supported by faithful tithes and offerings coming from dedicated believers. Now, an old identity minister I knew, there's only a few here who will know who I'm referring to, Fred Gabler. Not Fred Gabler, Fred Demerit. So my wife, Jason, my kids will know. But he said one time, somewhat jokingly, he said, the Bible says the poor you have with you always. He said, that's a good thing, because only the poor people support our movement. He said, the rich people don't do it. Only the poor people do. If someone is spending their money on entertainment and the pleasures of this world and not supporting the cause of white Christian revival, for them to remain silent simply because they don't want to lose a job or imagine respecting the community, then that would be sinful and comes under the condemnation. The love of money is the root of all evil. I want to keep my job because I like my lifestyle. There are many important decisions we make in our lives. Here are two of them. I'm going to make these very short because I've discussed it at length in the past. First major decision, embracing the love of our God. Some people call this being saved or being born again. It's the first commandment that Jesus said we must recognize. Remember, the young man comes to Christ. What's the greatest commandment? And Jesus says, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. And then Jesus said, without being asked, said the second commandment is like unto it. In other words, he's going to define The first commandment, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. What does that mean? In a sense, what does that mean? Do I have some rules? Because the guy probably thought Jesus was going to give the rules. Here's the rules to follow. Jesus wasn't talking about rules. He was talking about relationships. Your relationship to the Lord and your relationship to your fellow man. So he defines that first command by saying, love your neighbor as yourself. It's of equal importance. And we know neighbor from our studies, it clearly stated, is your kinsman. Love your God and love your people. Love your God and love your people. If we say we love God and we don't love his people, it makes us a liar. We have a world full of liars who say they love God. You see them all over the TV. They don't love their people. They don't love their people. We demonstrate our love for God by loving our people. Matthew 6:24. No man can serve two masters, for either he'll hate the one and love the other, or else he'll hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon, of course, means money. You cannot serve God and money. There's trouble with so many people, even within our movement. They're trying to serve two masters. We understand that an income is valuable and necessary, but if we remain silent in our testimony and witness for the one and only purpose of keeping a job, then we are serving men. But if we understand the principles I've illustrated here, and we remain silent because we know we need the income, we faithfully use this to support white Christian revival with our tithe, then we are serving God. So, in review, Christ said, agree with your adversary. I don't think he means you agree with sin. I don't think he means to deny your faith. But I do think he means don't be an antagonist. Especially if you're in a major city like St. Louis or Detroit or Chicago. You're in enemy territory. Don't be an antagonist. Stay mellow and focus on the message of white Christian revival. You need your job. Use your job and use your influence, because everybody is a person of influence. Everybody is. Everybody. I guarantee everybody here today, there's somebody who looks up to you and respects you for your beliefs and who you are. I guarantee that you're a positive influence on somebody and many people in your life. So everybody is a person of influence. So use your job. Use your influence. Use your income to spread the good news of white Christian revival. Remember, the purpose of your job, the purpose of your income, and the purpose of your life is not to buy a big screen TV, but to be a tool to witness to our people. That's what you're here for. One example, I'm going to close real quick here. One example I like to give. A lot of people have talents. Some people have a talent to be a carpenter. Some people have a talent to be a mechanic. Some people have a talent to whatever the case may be. Steve has a talent as a bricklayer. I believe block layer. And does beautiful work and other stuff. Everybody has a talent. And yes, people say, where did you get the talent? It's just in me. It's the talent I have. And there's some people, I don't know if anybody here today, but somebody listened to me on the internet. There's some people who have a talent to make money. You give $100 at 10 o'clock in the morning, by 6 o'clock that night, they turn it into $10,000. They say, how did they do it? I don't know. I just got a talent. Some people have a talent to make money. They just have it. I don't know how they do it. Some people have a talent to be a carpenter, electrician, whatever. And some people just have a talent. No matter what they do, they make money. And to those people who have that talent, here's my thought to you. God did not give you that talent so you can live in a fancy home, so you have a fancy car, and have fancy vacations. God gave you that talent so you can support white Christian revival. That's why he gave you the talent. And if you're not using that talent for that purpose, then you're robbing God. We saw the example of Samuel where he didn't tell everything to Saul's agents. He basically lied to them. He deceived them. He deceived the agents. Why? So he could continue on his mission. The important thing, and this is my last statement, the important thing is you need to consider is you need to stay viable to continue your mission. Let's have a word of prayer, then we'll finish with the song. Okay? Our Father, we ask that you touch the heart of everyone here today. Help us to have wisdom and understanding. Help us to witness to people, but do it with wisdom. There's some people they don't deserve the truth, if I might say. They don't deserve it because they don't have a heart for it. Why waste our time with them? Why cast our pearls before swine? But there's some people who do have a heart. We want to be able to be bold and witness and talk to them with love and compassion and show them the pathway to regain health to our nation, health to our people, the righteous path. Help us to be wise and use wisdom and love you and dwell in our hearts and dwell in our spirit that we can be a light unto the nation, a light set on a high hill that all may see. It's not our words they are going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at our light and our life. In your name we ask it. Amen.
I love to tell the story for those who know it best. Seem hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. And when in scenes of glory I sing the new song, 'twill be the old story that I have loved so long. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme and glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme and glory, to tell